Hey guys, how's it going? It's the Crypto Lark here. Today I got to sit down with John Wise. He is the CEO over at Loci. Loci is using the blockchain to revolutionize the way that we patent our ideas. We're going to be looking at exactly what they do. After a quick shout out to everyone who has been hitting that like button, of course, everybody who has been subscribing to the channel. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, hit the button up just down below to stay up to date with all of the latest in the crypto space. Furthermore, this is not professional financial advice. Please do your own due diligence before investing in any ICO. There is always a certain amount of inherent risk, so please know the risks before you get involved. Furthermore, the team at Loci has reached out to me to do a sponsored interview. However, I have, of course, reserved the right to ask all kinds of fun and challenging questions, so let's get into that interview. Welcome to the show, everybody. Super excited to have on today John Wise. He is the CEO over at Loci. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Loci is a very interesting project. Now, can you just give us real quick the elevator pitch of what is Loci and what are you trying to do?
Sure. Think of the eBay for intellectual property, right? For inventions. To start off, IP is the ownership right. It is literally the ownership right of an idea itself, any intellectual thought. So it can be anything from media, melody, song, lyric, or patent, invention, or logo, photograph, whatever it is, right? Whatever you want.
I like it. The eBay of intellectual property. It's that is a good elevator pitch. Now, why is this a problem anyway? I think a lot of people when they hear this go, patents? How are patents a problem? And it's interesting actually to see how many things are problems on the blockchain. People don't even necessarily or things that need blockchain that are problems that need it. So what's the problem?
Well, a lot. For one, the impact is absolutely massive. I'll get back to that in a second. But more than anything else, for one, patents last 20 years right now. It's a very stifling, it's a very difficult, and it's a very, very, very expensive process. It's really a pain in the ass. The patent system just sucks. There's no transparency. You get a lot of multinational corporations that stifle innovation, that lobby against certain things. I've heard that Monsanto has lobbied against genetics research actually being able to be patented, which means that none of the medical impacts can actually happen, all for a freaking soybean, right? Mm-hmm. That sort of stuff that's just ridiculous, right? So the altruist to me says, oh man, let's break this thing open and get the transparency out there and get the technologies that really can improve human life out so that people can do it and build it. And then the capitalist looks at the thing and says, holy shit, there's a lot of money to be made here. Look at the scale of the impact of this, right? So going back right to that impact, how big do you think the patent system is, or inventions are in, by way of global GDP?
Let's say 500 billion.
Yeah, not even close. 70% of GDP.
Wow.
70%.
So based on today, it's about $50 trillion, something like that.
No, that's just south of 100 trillion.
Wow.
A year.
Wow.
A year. Okay.
That's pretty big market.
Yeah. So, well, let me break it down, right? So GDP somewhere between 126 trillion a year and 144 trillion a year. Okay. And that is made up of goods, products, and services. So the goods, largely textiles, livestock, agriculture, right? Right around 15%. Services, largely banking, legal, finance, another 15 or so percent. Remember, it's none of the transactions, it's only the fees and services. Then products. Products are vast, right? They're everything. They improve the goods because you get combines and stuff like that. Nobody uses a hoe to get wheat anymore. They use a big combine, right? That's a product. That's a technology. The same goes for software, right? We wouldn't have stock markets, we wouldn't have exchanges if it weren't for a product. When you think about how vast this is, then you start to kind of break down the products. And you say, okay, well, products are made up of three things as well. They're made up of the materials to build that product, right? What actually goes into it. The people that execute and create said product, right? Mm-hmm. That's the execution side. And the idea of what the product is in the first place, right? Now, when you think about it, you've got the materials. Now, those materials, those are traded on commodities markets, right? Pretty easy thing. We trade the futures of what the materials are going to be. We think about the consumptive use, and then we say, okay, there's going to be more consumption down the road, which means the value of this material should increase, right? Now, the execution, that's traded on equities markets, right? This company is coming up with this technology, or they're building this, or they're getting a market share. They should have a competitive advantage. The value of that should go up, right? Mm-hmm. Where are the ideas traded?
Interesting. There isn't really a place where the ideas are traded, is there? They're filed off somewhere in a cabinet in some place that's probably still using giant floppy disks to calculate and register everything. And
worse than that, microfiche.
Oh my God.
I'm not joking. It takes 18 months to turn the paper filed patent into a PDF that then gets published.
Get out of here. That's ridiculous. How is this still happening? The year's 2017. We're almost in 2018. What's going on?
Yeah. They literally still have shoe boxes for patents. Well, think about it, man. Look, a patent lasts 20 years, okay? And it takes 8 years to get a patent granted usually. So 28 years ago, what was the technology we were using?
That's true.
Right? And what was the technology that the government was using 28 years ago, which is 48 years ago, right?
Exactly.
So they just got on XML, right? Like just last month got on XML.
It's amazing.
So you said something here. You said, oh, yeah, that's all paper filing that was filed away somewhere, right? How did we used to trade equities?
Yeah, on papers, right?
Stocks, bonds, they used to actually get transacted for gold bullion or whatever else, right? We used to do it in paper. We used to do a peer-to-peer transaction. We used to do it through lawyers. Oh, wait, that's exactly how we do the patent system. That is exactly how we exchange IP, right? The missing link to the whole thing was a computational analysis of valuation. And we needed to be able to hash it out. We needed to be able to have some computational way to determine what something was fundamentally, right? And then you could determine the value, and you could have speculative markets, and you could have lending, and you could have lending-based assets, and all sorts of stuff. But you needed to know what it fundamentally was. And that's what my dad and I invented in 2008, was a valuation metric for context, contextual derivation.
Very interesting. Yeah, and that's an interesting fact as well. You've been working on this project for quite a while.
It only takes 10 years to become an overnight success, man.
That said, everybody, oh, how'd you do that? That was so quick. Well, we've been working quietly in the background for a long time.
One amazing year that Loci launched, and it was crazy, right? It's like, yeah, it's 2008. 2008. I've been working on this.
That's okay. Sometimes good ideas take a long time. Now, why is Loci superior to going and using a patent agent?
Well, it's a lot faster. It's a lot cheaper. And we work with the patent agents, right? So first and foremost, right, Loci is the company, and then we have a Loci Foundation, which manages the crypto side. That is a nonprofit. Loci Inc. is a Delaware C corporation. I know it gets a little confusing. And then we have a product called Inven. And Inven is a very simple do-it-yourself patent searching tool, right? I always say the very first question any inventor needs to ask himself is, has this thing been invented before, right? It's a very simple, very easy question to ask. It's a really hard answer to get. You think about what has to go into that. You know, you just think about that for yourself, right? Has a headphone ever been invented? Something that we take for granted. Well, how do I think about the headphone? How would I explain it? How would I describe it? Do I just call it a headphone? Well, if you're the only one that has that name, good luck finding it in a keyword search, right? So what we do is with InVen, we sell that to patent attorneys, patent agents all over the world. They then sell it to their clients, right? There's a small markup for them. Ultimately, those guys need to pay for the accounting and bill keeping and all that stuff too. But it gets delivered to a customer with attorney-client privilege built into it now for $250 per user per month, right? It's very inexpensive. Traditionally, if you were to hire a patent attorney to do a prior art search, it would be fixed fee of around $2,500, and they would lose their ass on it, right? It's usually about $4,600 to $5,000 for the attorney to pay. So it's a huge loss leader for them. So we're not looking at really disrupting the patent system. We're not even looking at being a competitor with them. What we're looking at doing is augmenting it and improving the whole fashion, right? So in order to explain your question a little bit more, I have to explain a little bit about the patent system and the provisions that they've done, right? So in the US and PCT, which is kind of the global unified patent system, we're all on a first to file basis, okay? Now that was in 2007, 2008, when we did the America Invents Act. And first to file basically means that that the first inventor to actually file the patents to get it in gets it, right? We used to be kind of a first to invent before, or first to art, or there are several things, first to disclose.
But now it's just a race to the patent office.
Yeah, it is, which is kind of a stifling thing in the first place, right? Because people put in patents that they're really not ready for, and between that and the cost associated with filing a patent, the patent office has recognized a big exposure for their inventors, right? They said, oh, well, it's really expensive to file a patent and to do all this research. Anybody that they go and raise money from then have the opportunity to steal it, right? And so they said, okay, well, let's come up with a couple of provisions for this so that our inventors don't get their invention stolen. The first was called the provisional patent, right? The provisional patent is a $99 patent that is non-examined that lasts 1 year, okay, a 12-month period. Within that 12-month period, you have absolute exclusivity, and you must file a non-provisional patent within that 1 year span, okay? At the same time as creating that provisional patents clause, they also created something called the public disclosure clause. Now, a public disclosure has the same legal rights in most countries, but not all, which is part of what we need the funds to work on. It has the same legal rights as a provisional patent. It grants you a 12-month exclusivity to your invention or idea, and gives somebody the ability to file a non-provisional patent without needing to cite themselves for prior art. What that basically entails, that public disclosure, is anybody that creates or releases a white paper, anybody that releases a product, sells a product, speaks about it at a conference, anything like that, it's a public disclosure, right? Now, that is exactly where Loci and the blockchain come in. We had our existing patent searching tool that already had sales before we had even thought of doing a blockchain integration. And we saw the public disclosure and blockchain just being perfect harmony, right? anybody that is already using the tool can now stake directly on the blockchain without an intermediary and have the same legal court admissible rights everywhere in the world for free. Amazing, right?
Yeah, it's
Or
huge.
for very
It's
cheap.
huge. Absolutely. This is a perfect case for blockchain in so many ways. You know, patents, old, outdated, not inefficient, expensive. Blockchain can make it cheaper, more efficient. Not to mention, this is what you just said is super important. Time stamped on the blockchain. Here's my, the inception of the idea. Here we go, right there, boom, and it's done. And it's a free service.
Yep. It is. So it does actually cost 1 coin to stake on the blockchain. That was more of a technical thing than anything else. But anybody that doesn't get value out of their invention that they've staked, we've built an economic model that actually reimburses them. So we can go into that some other time. But yeah, I mean, when you really think of it, there were 2 really outdated systems that really were the first blockchains. Right? One being the title and deed system, right? That goes back thousands of years, really. Land ownership rights, ownership of property. See where I'm going with this, right? Ownership of property, where you need to see a direct lineage of owners in order to confirm that it is transferable. Pretty simple, right? It went through an intermediary that open sourced it, that made it trusted and validated the information, but only by the crowd, right? It wasn't that the intermediary, the government, was confirming it. It was that it was just storage. At the same time, right, the other property ownership system is the patent system, right? We look at not so much the ownership of a patent, because the patent itself doesn't change hands as much as new patents come out, but the prior art, what inventions came before in order for X to exist today, right?
Very, very
and
interesting.
when you look at the lineage of the prior art,
very, very interesting.
Sorry, I'm being a bit long-winded here, but
that's okay. There's a lot of important information here to get across, and I think this really gives people a good understanding of how all this is working and what's going on here exactly, and sets up the case for, hey, well, why is Loci important? Because if you haven't looked into patents before and you don't know anything about how this inefficient legacy system is working, well, you might not understand why this is actually such an interesting idea that you have here. Now, you've got an IP marketplace that's being set up. There is a live product going on already. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So the product is actually really quite simple. It's just 4 keyword searches displayed in a Venn diagram, right? Where each search is a completely independent search. Each search displays its results in a single circle, right? And then when you add in multiple circles, you get kind of this overlap in the middle there. That overlap then identifies the results that were in both result sets. It sounds pretty obvious in hindsight. When you see the thing work, it's like, oh, that's pretty straightforward and obvious. And you're like, oh shit, why doesn't Google do all of this? They do pagination, so I get hundreds of thousands of results that are in a list format. Like, oh, all right, well, that makes sense now. But yeah, so that's the do-it-yourself tool. I mean, I can go into that a bit more. I would love to see some more users for it, so maybe I should. But from there, from that initial search, users then create their own result set. They save relevant results or prior art to that result set. That result set then is titled by them, and then a dot. All the results in Invent are identified by a dot instead of a list or a title. Then a dot is created with the same title as what you've just named the result set. Now, what's cool about that is it doesn't need to get staked on a blockchain. It doesn't need to get stored, but it can become discoverable and yet offers transparency at the same time. So if that person wants to keep that invention secret and file a patent, they can, and it'll just show that there is a dot that shows up in the overlapping results, but there's really very little information about it. However, if they want to file it on the blockchain, what they can do is fill out basically a provisional patent web form. that as soon as somebody else recognizes their dot as being relevant prior art, as soon as somebody clicks on it, it posts to the blockchain, right? So it can all store and save off chain without needing to lag a system.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the thing has been validated, right, as soon as it has initial value, there it goes. Now it gets sent to the blockchain, right? And it has a valuation metric plug.
Very cool.
So that's the first product, yeah.
Now, what exactly does the token do? I mean, of course, except for, taking everyone to the moon when they invest and, we get $1 million later on, what's the exact function of the token within the ecosystem?
Sure. Okay, so there are a couple of things. So the product has been live with customers for $249, and that's $249, $250 per user per month, okay?
Mm-hmm.
When we wanted to add in the token, we didn't want to change the economics, and it also made a lot of sense for some other reasons I'll explain in a sec, to just add on a token layer, right? So it's $250 or 100 coin. That's a really smart thing from an accounting perspective, which a lot of people in crypto don't really think about for some reason, because we can get deferred revenue from that, which is really fantastic. Additionally, you can also use one coin to stake an invention on the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any per claim, you stake a claim on the blockchain, right? And then from there, you can also use the coin to buy and sell IP. Now, the buying and selling of IP assets is largely going to be overrun and taken by banks and enterprises. But that's okay, because what that ultimately ends up meaning is that they have to buy them from people that are getting the coin for coming up with ideas
Mm-hmm.
and selling the inventions to Loci, right? Because of the attorney-client privilege and because of the way that the legal constructs are around IP, unfortunately, we had to have a hybrid system where it couldn't be completely decentralized. We had to be an intermediary. In order to be able to transact the assets, Loci had to be the intermediary. However, it's a nonprofit, and two, any of the proceeds that are raised from the transactions, the proceeds or the increase in margins,
Mm-hmm.
from buying and selling the IP, kind of packaging them together and selling for greater than the sum of its parts, right? Any of that actually rains back down as an airdrop to any inventor that has staked an invention on the blockchain or any IP on the blockchain but hasn't been able to sell it, right? Thus reimbursing everybody else, backing the entire currency ecosystem by IP assets, thus making it an asset-backed currency, getting us away from being an asset-backed security, and reimbursing the entire network. It also lends towards the valuation metric being a crowd-based valuation metric.
Very, very interesting. Now, it seems like there's going to be a lot of demand for that token. So if it's 200 and let's say 250 a month, and so that's going to be $3,000 a year from X amount of different partners that are registered. So there's definitely a lot of potential for huge demand for these tokens. Now, imagine I'm
Yeah.
a company and I come and I sign up, and so can I pay in fiat, but it's transacted
Yeah.
in Loci coins, so I can just swipe my credit card, but it actually goes through in Loci coins
for the product or
for the
for
monthly registration fee.
Yeah. So you could either pay $250, right, or 100 coin. It doesn't. It goes either way, and that is paying your lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not paying Loci. That's you directly paying your lawyer for the legal fees.
Yep.
You don't even need to worry about any of that. You can sign up through our website, and we can group you with a lawyer that still gets you the attorney-client privilege.
Yep.
But we're not attorneys, right? And thus, we didn't want to carry the burden, nor do we want anybody to suspect and assume that we could have some access to their confidential information. That couldn't be further from the truth.
Very, very cool. Now, one thing that I think is really important here, and maybe you can fill us in a bit more on the details here. The legal implications of filing patents on the blockchain. Is this going to be, I suppose, respected by the relevant agencies in different countries? Have you already got a nod from the patent office in the U.S., for example, saying, "Oh yeah, this is going to be good"? And can you explain about the legal implications for us?
Yeah. So I was explaining a little bit about that earlier, right? That public disclosure clause is court admissible in 37 countries. So that is well within today's regulation. I mean, Cooley's a partner of ours, right? Well, I can't say partner because they're all an LLP, and affiliates of ours, associate. I don't know what you want to call it, but they've been working with us very tightly. The U.S. Patent Office has worked with us a bit in the past. We're based in Virginia, which is where USPTO is, and the state of Virginia is an equity holder in Loci. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I was not aware of that. That's very interesting, though. That's really interesting.
Yeah. We're not messing around. We've gone through 2 equity rounds before. We've got another equity round for the for-profit coming up in Q1. There's a lot of other stuff. So yeah, there are. I shouldn't say legal implications, but it still fits well within the legal regulation, right? The regulatory constraints.
And now
that's with existing regulation.
Yeah, those 37 countries you mentioned, I imagine, not to give me a whole list, of course, but I imagine those are mostly OECD countries, France, the UK, Japan, stuff like this. All the countries where the majority of global inventing is actually happening. So very cool. Now, I want to talk.
Well, that's not really true. That's not really true, right? I mean, we need to break this. We need to break this thought that patents are inventing. It's not
true,
right? Everybody has an invention. Everybody has an idea, and most people have ideas every day, right? But because we've got this stigma thinking that patents are the only way to monetize that idea, that there is no value to an idea, it's only the execution, right? We've heard it a million times. That doesn't matter, right? The idea matters, and the idea has value. It has impact. Getting the idea out there is huge. It doesn't really matter what the social economics are of the country, right? They can be in Nigeria, they could be in the favelas of Brazil, they could be in the Ukraine, they could be in New Zealand, right? They could be in Ohio. It doesn't matter. If the idea is valid and it's novel, let the crowd determine if it has value.
So every time that somebody goes and says, "Wow, that would be $1 million idea," they don't actually have to do that idea. They just need to come to Loci, register it. Someone else can as soon as a bank or someone comes along and says, "Oh, that's the idea would be great. Oh, this guy over in Ohio actually owns it already. We got to buy it off him then because he's already got it."
Yep, and that's exactly where the transaction in Loci Coin occurs, right? So what we do, and this is the thing that I probably should emphasize more and more, right? What Loci really does is it bifurcates the valuation of execution and ideation, right? Individuals are very good at being nimble and coming up with really cool stuff, right? Enterprise is really, really terrible at coming up with cool stuff. They're really good at making things work, right? They really are. So there are a couple of options, right? So basically anybody that comes up with a new idea, they can list it for sale, right? They can put a bid up right to Loci. They would actually be selling it to Loci at the fixed and open valuation metric as determined by the crowd, okay? Then Loci would package that invention or idea or IP. It could be lyrics, it could be melodies, whatever, right? It would package it contextually through our proprietary algorithm, group those things together, and then sell in totality as a package deal to an enterprise or a bank. Like selling all the inventions around the next iPhone, right? We could sell that to Apple, but here's where it gets really cool. because maybe instead of selling to Apple, and right now I'm in New York City, by the way, for this reason, maybe instead of selling to Apple, we could sell to somebody like Goldman Sachs. Okay. And if we sell the iPhone, all the underlying IP behind the iPhone to Goldman Sachs, they then can license that IP to Apple, which breaks something called the Volcker rule, which is you can't have speculative assets in and speculative assets out. That's exactly how we got mortgage-backed securities and credit default swaps. That's where the Volcker rule came from, for a damn good reason. But it breaks the Volcker rule by giving and tying a real fixed asset, fixed value to it. So Goldman can license the IP around the iPhone to Apple and then launch an ETF, literally selling equity for the iPhone without ever selling a single share of Apple. And they can do it through cryptocurrency in the matter of a day.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. That's the potential is huge, without a doubt. Now,
yeah.
You're in New York now. You've mentioned the state of Virginia. You've got a lot of partners on. Can you tell us about any of the other partnerships that you've been forming?
Ooh, yeah. I might get in trouble for a few of them, but
only the ones you're not gonna get in trouble for.
No, I like getting in trouble. Yeah, we've officially partnered with. We are partnering with Salt.
Fantastic.
We're going to be one of their first syndicated lending companies. Caleb, Sean, Greg, those guys are all good friends of mine. Sean and Caleb, especially, very good friends. In addition to that, though, it makes a lot of sense, right? Syndicated lending of any currency, beautiful. But what our intentions are here, and it all comes down to regulatory constraints, right?
Mm-hmm.
What our intentions are longer term is, because Loci ultimately will end up being an asset-backed currency, there is the potential or the opportunity to lend against that asset. Now, what's cool about it is that banks everywhere in the world, in fact, every bank recognizes intellectual property as an asset today, mm-hmm. right? That means that any of the IP that is backed by any of the IP backing a coin immediately transfers that asset valuation to the coin or to the currency, right? Fundamentally, that could mean that a company like Salt could actually lend against Loci coin ownership, as that being its own collateral or asset.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That opens up the door for mortgages. It opens up the door for savings accounts, checking accounts, 401ks, IRAs, margin loans, everything that we know in traditional banking now can happen, right? And you can get IP, cryptocurrency backed mortgages at, say, 2 to 3% with no issue, right? It can literally come from Wells Fargo or Bank of America or whatever, right? UBS. It can come from your bank. And I think that is so cool.
That is pretty cool. This is the future, though, in so many ways. The tokenization of everything, the monetization of more things than you could possibly imagine, and it's really exciting times to be, looking forward to these different projects and, getting involved at an early stage with these things. It's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Now,
so a couple other partners, if I've got time.
Yeah, absolutely, please.
We're going to be working with some pretty big people here. Some of the smaller ones right now are Aqua, which does biomedical research IP.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a couple of other KYC companies as well. It looks like we're going to probably be partnering a little bit down the road. Again, all this is pending legal review from both sides. With Shift, I've already joined the advisory team on Current and Shift, as well as Simply Vital Health.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also launching another spin-off out of Loci that you guys should take a look at down the road here, which is going to be called the top tier affiliate group that's basically going to be the best of the best blockchain cryptocurrency businesses that will be doing a roadshow together. So keep an eye out for that banner. And then we've also got some discussions going on with Steve Waterhouse and Orchid Labs. And some other pretty big IP brokers around the world. Those guys have bigger legal teams than I do, so I probably shouldn't mention their names.
I'm sure they
there's some,
their NDAs are probably pretty watertight, I imagine.
Yeah, these are Fortune 50 companies. There's 3 of them, and they're massive. We also have just recently partnered with Northwestern University as well, which is in Chicago. So
very
big,
cool.
big things, right? Not little, yeah.
Yeah, lots of great partnerships, and of course, you know, the three Fortune 50 companies. That's really big as well. And of course, you can't let us know until it's actually locked down and signed and all that stuff. But the fact that it's there, guys, is coming. You know, it's definitely in the works. Now, as far as trying to market your product, what is the strategy for, you know, raising awareness about this?
Well, the first thing was to get it out of my hands because I am not good at it. I'm the inventor. I just get esoteric about it. It's just, yeah, no, it was bad.
It's good to understand your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, what is Sun Tzu has some derivation, right? It's like the man that knows his weakness knows his strength. Yeah, so we recently brought on a really great team member. I don't know if I can say his name yet, but we're basically bringing him on as a CMO. He's going to be fantastic. He already has been helping quite a bit. It's been amazing. So that's side one. Side two is doing stuff like this. I mean, getting the word out there. We've been fortunate to have a lot of pretty big mainstream stuff. We were
you were saying you've been on like CNBC and stuff like that, and
yeah. I mean, we've been on Washington Post. Honestly, I forget half of them at this point. Bloomberg, the American Bar Association, I think, did something. There were a whole bunch of really big, you know, $20-30 million view sort of publications. So it's been really a wild ride. It's been fantastic. But that's really the PR side. We really needed to refine the message and get the marketing right as well. And that's where getting the right team members comes in.
And speaking of team, you know, I was looking at your team, and it's solid. You know, you got lots of developers, you got blockchain people, you know, you got marketing people coming in, and great. You know, you look around sometimes in the space, and you definitely don't see teams that are really so focused on actually developing the product, bringing it to the blockchain, and making that happen in that way, without a doubt. So it's really good to see you guys got this sorted out, and you have a really good advisory board too, and that perhaps is my next question. You can expand a bit on the team if you want to, but the question would be, what role do the advisors play?
Oh, they all have very specific roles, right? And they all actually do stuff, which is really crucial, right? Everybody in blockchain, everybody's like, "Oh, I'll be an advisor." It's like, okay, what are you gonna offer? Like, my
face.
No, I've got one of those too. It's really not necessary. It's true though. It's true. So yeah, I mean, it really depends. I mean, we've got some great people like Bill Schrader, for instance, who was the founder of PSINet. I don't know if you know what PSINet is.
I don't.
Okay, so this is a story that you'll probably never hear anywhere else. PSINet was the first internet infrastructure business. It was the first billion-dollar internet company, right? It spun off into AOL and Verizon and Bell South and AT&T and all these other things, right? It was massive. I think $20-30 billion business. But when they were going public, Bill, the CEO, said, "Oh God, nobody knows about us," right? So he came up with a genius way of getting people awareness. That was to have a very public fight. So he made up a company that was just PSI spelled backwards, right? And had a very public fight on NASDAQ and, NBC over billion-dollar patent litigations and things like that. Ultimately, for regulation and other things, PSI didn't work out, but the other company did okay, right? I'm sure you've heard of what an ISP is before.
It's a fantastic story.
Yeah, so literally the term ISP, the Internet Service Protocol, was made up for a public fight and a marketing ploy by one of my board members, Bill Schrader.
That's awesome.
So we've got some growth equity guys too. We've got some really great investors as well. We've got some people that have stuck through and been on the board and the advisory team for a long time. We've got securities lawyers that are advisors. We've got IP people. We've got or even some of them current examiners at the patent office. There are people. One of our investors, our equity holders, is the ex-CEO or maybe even current CEO of KPMG, right? Another one is the head of IP for head of IPOs for Hilton Worldwide, right? Another one is the executive director of Jones Lang LaSalle, which is a huge real estate property company. There's diversity, but they're bulldogs of industry, right? And they know what's coming. They know what needs to happen. And these guys are the ones that can really stand behind us, right? Ultimately, it's great to have advice. It's better to have aligned incentives with very powerful people. Because at the end of the day, those ones are the ones that are going to go to bat for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever get into a lobbying fight with somebody like Monsanto or, BASF or whatever, right?
Good to have powerful friends.
You better have some really great people on your team, right?
Fantastic. All right, well, I want to move on.
Look, it's not my first rodeo, right?
That's it. I want to move on a little bit to the token sale. Now, I see that if there are any unsold tokens, they're going to be locked up and not burnt. Why have you made that decision?
Because of redundancies built into the system, right? So you got to think of a couple of things here, right? For one, yes, we go back 18 digits. Okay, that's great, right? However, if you have a huge influx of people that come into a network, into a system, you can have gridlock on the asset side and on the currency side very, very, very quickly, right? Everybody will want that currency to be sitting there in reserve to be able to go into the market, because speculative value can drive the thing all the way up to a point that no transactions can occur, nothing can happen, and then the entire network crashes, right? You can't have that for a genuine asset-backed currency, right? So we've got a couple of redundancies. We needed to measure that very, very, very carefully. And on top of that, the value of everything is going to continue to go up, right? And I mean, let's be honest, right? Bitcoin has a lockup period, right? They didn't burn their tokens, right?
There you go.
There's a reason for it.
There you go. Interesting.
So did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it absolutely does. It makes a lot of sense. And I just wanted to ask because it's kind of the cool thing to be doing right now, burning your tokens instead of locking them up. I see personally the utility in locking them up versus burning them, and I wonder, because it is the cool thing to burn them. Actually locking them up makes a lot of sense, because if you want to have a highly liquid network moving forward, if you burn half your tokens, and your tokens become super rare, and the whales just hold them, and it becomes too speculative. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. The people who just want to drive their Lamborghinis on the moon, they understand it, and that's why they get it and hold stuff and don't do anything with them, because they want that.
A friend of mine has a company called Moon Lambo too, and it's just
That's hilarious. Now, you guys have got a $19 million hard cap, and I think it's a
Yes.
very reasonable amount of money considering the current space. I know we've seen some absolute blockbuster ICOs that have gone and asked really,
Hmm.
to be honest, for way too much money. Now, what are you going to
Sure.
do with that 19 million? How's it going to get spent?
Well, so the bulk of it, well, all that 19 million is really staying inside of that, inside of the nonprofit, right? It's being raised by that nonprofit. Now, there's a little bit of sharing through licenses in the first place, right? Some of it's going to go towards development, some of it's going to go towards securing our own IP for
Mm-hmm.
longer, right? One of the things that people bust my balls about all the time is, oh, well, we want to decentralize the world. It's like, yeah, I do too. But guess what? There are very powerful people that can take that away from us if we don't secure it, right?
Mm.
I've got the shared vision with you. Let me get the IP and secure it on our behalf, and then we're good, right? There's a bit of lobbying as well. We also need some legal fees for actually the entity setup between the Gibraltar nonprofit and the all the contracts and the sharing for all of that. We need to do some more marketing and PR push
Mm-hmm.
to drive the value up. And then we need to start buying assets, like real IP assets, of which there may not be that much left over. But nonetheless, I mean, it's all getting reciprocated back to the network. It's all going back in.
Very, very cool. Now, what do you see as perhaps the biggest challenges for Loki moving forward?
Public perception. Um, breaking that idea that Loki's a patent system or something along those lines, right? Or, oh, I'm not an inventor. I don't have good ideas. It's like, yeah, you just dropped your cell phone in the toilet and you just screamed out you wished it was waterproof, right? That's an idea.
Hmm.
Um, Everybody has that. So that's side one. Side two is bringing the enterprises and the banks on board. Um, I've had some pretty good success with that, but it's a huge undertaking, right? These are $100 billion businesses that move very slowly. And number three is bringing the law firms on board. They're all up for it. It just takes a long time, right? Um, Ultimately, when you think about it, right, lawyers need to cover their ass, right?
Yeah.
They say, okay, well, if I missed something and I was using the name brand tool, no big deal, right? I get a slap on the wrist. If I missed something and I was using an off-brand tool, big deal, right? So it really comes down a lot to education, educating the marketplace in general, right?
Hmm.
Teaching people, and I hope that even if you don't use it, that every one of your listeners calls up an IP attorney, please, please, please. In fact, maybe this would be a great airdrop for those leftover tokens if we have any. Is call your local attorney and request that you can buy the Inven, Loci Inven, from your lawyer, right? That's actually a really great guerrilla marketing tactic. I don't know why I hadn't
Yeah,
thought of
I,
that
I like
before,
that.
but
See, there you go. Wait. I'm getting the patent out. Hold on. Wait.
fair. I deserve
uh,
that.
that's fantastic. I like that. I like that. See, the ideas come out of nowhere. It's amazing. But it just proves the point
Everyone
of
has an
why Loki.
idea.
That's it. It proves the idea of why Loki's actually such a super cool project, and it's something I actually get excited about. And it's really cool. Now,
Yeah,
one question I did want to bring up to you as
sure.
well. This is an Ethereum-based token. Are you worried about the Ethereum blockchain? Kitties have killed it. How's Loki going to survive? Are you thinking about other blockchains? If so, which blockchains?
Okay, so it wasn't just kitties that killed it. Um, it was Loki and kitties that killed it. Um, within the hour, I was on the phone with the C-suite at Kitties and several of the core devs at Ethereum. And we got on with MetaMask and my Ether wallet and all those guys. We changed the gas. So yeah, we band-aided the whole thing together, but it screwed us up a little bit. the price itself. So yes, I'm concerned. I've always been concerned. Our simulations show around 1.6 million transactions a second at full scale.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way in hell Ethereum's going to scale to that. Never going to happen, right? Now, most of it happens off-chain for us, but honestly, I'm looking at EOS. I'm close to those guys as well, and I think it's bitching. I really do. I always have.
Amen. Yeah,
is that a reasonable thing?
I think that's a reasonable thing. I think that's look it that's the end. You know, it could have been EOS, could have been another one. You know, but that's the answer that's needed. You know, it's that you understand the problem. You see that okay, Ethereum's probably not going to be able to do what we want it to do. We got to find other ways to work around this in the future. And you know, Ethereum obviously that's a whole different conversation. They got to work on their product and scale and all that stuff. But you know, for you guys, that's awesome. That you know you've identified the problem. You're thinking about okay, where do we go?
Coding on it. We're already coding on it. I mean, that'll probably be done in a week or two.
Awesome.
I mean, no, like we're way ahead of that, right?
Yeah.
We've played around with Symbiont. We've played around with a couple with Hyperledger, with EOS, and NAM. We've had discussions with Neo and Walton and all this stuff. I mean, yeah, man, we're a real team, and it's actually. I'm really proud that you said that we're a great and qualified team, because that's usually what people get on my case about, like the number of ICO rating websites out there that say, oh, you know, the CEO used to be a mechanic. It's like, yeah, dude, he was an aerospace engineer. Like, he has a lot of inventions, right? Like, oh, the COO has no qualifications. It's like, oh, aside from Ernst & Young and GE Capital and oh, you know, the CTO, you know, used to work in the restaurant industry. He's like, yeah, but he has a master's degree in astrophysics. It's like, oh, anyway, that's my only rant for the night, for the day.
We've done well then.
Yeah.
Now, just a few quick notes before we finish up on the token sales. So, can you just let us know now if I do remember my notes here correctly? So, U.S. citizens can participate. Is there anyone that's restricted from participating?
OFAC.
Only citizens of China, I imagine.
No. China's fine.
China. Wait, what?
No, ultimately, look at the end of this whole thing, right? It has utilitarian purpose, and at the same time, it is an asset-backed currency of an asset that is already recognized in China, right, and transacts in China. If they ultimately have if China has an issue with it, and we have lawyers that are looking into it currently, right? If China has an issue, I will refund the money to any Chinese purchasers, or directly buy a Chinese IP asset with it, with the proceeds from it. So there are plenty of ways to work around that, and it's going to be a case-by-case basis. I'm happy to talk with the regulators. We already are.
Okay, very interesting, very interesting. And so, as far as the date of the token sale and how much are you going to be able to buy for like 1 Ethereum?
1 Ethereum in the last round, I believe, was 1,400 tokens. We have a round out now. So just to be clear, we're not doing an ICO at all. It is completely pre-sale. So it's crowd pre-sale, right? Anybody can participate. But the reason is that we have different tranches that have depreciating discounts as you get closer to liquidity, right? It just makes sense. Right? The price of it is more as I'm closer to making my money back. Those that get in early get the bigger discount. So there is a tie to, I think we're tied to $461 per ETH. So I don't know what the math is right now.
I'll put a link down below and people can check the exact metrics for where we are at the moment. So basically what we're seeing is, you know, less ICO. This is a token generation event where you can, basically pre-buy the tokens and move from there. So,
Exactly, right.
well, John Wise, thank
it,
you so much for taking the time. It's been really cool.
it's live now by Loci Coin, but at the same time, it ends on December 30th.
Very cool.
Ends at the end of the year.
Very cool.
Right.
So I'll have a link down below for anyone who wants to get in on that. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.